All right. What's good, people? Hope everybody's well. Y'all know what it is. Welcome back to the Onyx Report, where we as black male justice advocates uplift black men and boys using critical analysis. Hope you guys are doing well today. Shout out to those of you who dropped in early. We are broadcasting on innerlightradio.com, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, of course, Twitch, Twitter. We'll see how long that goes. I don't know what's going to go on with Twitter in the next X amount of time, so we'll see. And of course, on the Onyx Network. We're not broadcasting live on there at the moment, but this will be replayed on the network. So support, like, share, subscribe, join, and donate if you will. Support the channel. You can become a member on YouTube by clicking the join button, at the bottom of the screen, right next to the subscribe button. I hope you have subscribed and hit the bell so you can get all the notifications. I think they're starting to pull back. I haven't broadcasted as regularly this last few weeks, so the algorithm is punishing me to some extent, but I'm also a bit shadow banned at the same time. So, make sure you subscribe and make sure you're still subscribed. Some people may have been unsubscribed, but join, and you can choose what level of membership you want to, engage on YouTube. You can also go to Patreon and become a patron. You can support the Onyx Report show here. You can also support the Institute for Black Male Studies. You can also support the Onyx Network. So we got a lot of stuff going on. So make sure you are supporting all of those. And I got a very quick merchandise update. Let me go ahead and move this over here. See if I can go ahead and share that with you guys. Come on. All right. There we go. So let me go ahead and get some of this up here for y'all to see. So this is on the Institute for Black Male Studies website. You can see if you click merchandise in the menu that we have some new merchandise. We have some Adidas bags, one with the Institute for Black Male Studies logo, the other one with the I Am a Black Masculinist logo there. So you can support the Institute by purchasing some merchandise from the site. I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat. And anybody that's interested, you can go ahead and do that. And of course, if you are looking to provide or support, I should say, in other ways, as I'm dealing with all of these little tech surprises. Oh man, I'm getting all kinds of them today. Ain't that interesting? All right. You can also support in this manner here. So you can go ahead and support the channel through Cash App if you're so inclined. Right? You got PayPal, you got Venmo, all the goodies are there. So shout out to all of you who support. And as a matter of fact, I haven't done it in a while. Let me go ahead and honor some of my subscribers by acknowledging them. All right. So appreciate that. So let me shout out a few people who came through early. Prince Johnny, what's up? Queen Kalila, how you doing? KJ, War Childs, what's up? Got Presto in here. Brother Ian, shout out to you, man. I saw your message the other day. You were asking me if I was going to review Till. So you guys let me know if that's something you want me to do. I have not seen the film yet. So if that's something you want me to do, make sure you let me know in the chat and I will go from there. So I hadn't decided. That's one you got to be in the right headspace for, no matter what they do. The story itself, I've been teaching for 25 odd years. And every time I do, man, you got to get yourself in a certain mental state to do it. So I saw your message and I was going to respond, but I couldn't find where you left it. So I just figured I'd let you know now. Shout out to electrician, brother Ron. See, we got a number of people in the building. James, Jay Cleveland, AKs and Curtains. What's up? Steven, you already know. You already know. Shout out to Spain Man. What's going on? MLR, much appreciation for the support. Supporting our Black male scholars as always. Thank you for that. So let's get in here. Shout out to brother Malika. Hey, what's good, man? How you doing? Ain't seen you in a little minute. Hope you're well. Right? We got Greg. We got Chukwu. Yeah. So we got a few things going on. Brother Ray, what's up? Yeah. Okay. Let me see. Hold on. Let me just do this. Let's see. Gonna handle some house business. Alert my son to some things real quick. Okay. There we go. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on. All right, so we're done with that. Okay. All right, so today, got a few things happening. We're going to jump right in because at the end of the day, man, there's some things that I keep seeing dropping into my box every other day almost, and I don't always post it, but I wanted to have a discussion. And y'all know on this channel, we've done this quite a bit over the years. I don't think it gets the attention that it should. So that said, if you didn't see the title of the show, if you didn't see the thumbnail, right, it's School Marms Gone Crazy. And that's essentially what we have happening. And it's something that needs to be discussed. It needs to be dealt with, needs to be put out for public consumption. Because we find that, of course, when we have male offenders, most particularly in regard to K through 12, that's readily put on the news. People have a way of interpreting that. They immediately know where to go with that. But when it comes to female offenders, the law is getting a little better about sentencing them, about incarcerating them, but the public, that's a different matter. I think in many ways, there's still a sense that boys don't really need protection, that only girls need protection, and that this is not really a problem. I think there's a kind of sentiment that this is easy. And I can tell you, even dealing with college age men, I'll give you an example. So one young man I worked with about a decade ago, he was dealing with a woman that was about 10 years older than him. And emotionally, she really just ran circles around him. In terms of maturity, he could not keep up. And, it didn't take long before he looked like a shell of himself. I mean, she literally just toyed with him. And that's one of the issues when it comes to these types of dynamics. And that can be a legal one. That could just be being with a woman that's just more mature and older than you are. So, imagine that this 18-year-old boy who's dealing with a damn near 30-year-old woman who he can't keep up with emotionally, who's toying with him simply because she can. Let's backtrack that, right? Let's go from 18 to 13, right? And you're talking about a woman who is anywhere from 25 to 40, 45 sometimes. How exactly does a 13-year-old boy navigate that? What's the impact that those types of things can have on a young man who has not really established him yet, has not reached adulthood yet? Right? For the fellows that listen to my channel, shout out to Shay Sade. I see you in there. Thanks for coming through. Appreciate that support. This may be something that I need to rap with you about at some point in time. I'd like to get your insight, as well as Queen Kalila. She's still in the house. It's something I'd like to hear her thoughts about. But especially, because I know Kalila has sons, so she knows this as a mother. Of course, the fellas in the house, I definitely want, especially if you have sons, I want to hear your thoughts. We'll probably bring some people up a little bit later. But it's one of those things where, if you're dealing with somebody who is emotionally more advanced, more mature, what impact can this have on a young man? How can this impact and affect him, especially if he hasn't reached adulthood yet, if he hasn't completed puberty even, and he's having a person in a position of authority who's using that authority to manipulate him. And I know the public sentiment in many ways is to downplay the issue. I think the public attitude is that boys are fine, right? Because again, when we talk about sexual violation, it's something only men can do to women. And in some instances, young men can do to older women. But we don't have any sensibility around what grown women can do to young men and boys. And so we're going to go through a couple of cases where we talk about, or we look at what is actually happening in some of these situations. And I think personally, there's a couple things that have been downplayed. I do personally think, and this is not based on any empirical data I can find, that during the pandemic and right after, I think there might have been a bit of an uptick in some of this. And then I would also suggest that we really don't know the numbers for young men that are dealing with these kinds of situations. And that's also because we don't have a sensibility around reporting. And you understand, I mean, even women had to be taught to identify themselves as having experienced sexual violation. right? In the 70s and the 80s, you saw this kind of boom in films that came out that talked about sexual assault, that really visualized what it looks like. The guy chasing a woman down an alley with a knife, or breaking into her house or apartment when she's there alone. All these kinds of scenarios. And all those things did is really familiarize ourselves with a very distinct narrative that women were victims, men were victimizers, and that's it. We didn't really see the reverse of that. I mean, again, especially in terms of black men, the only thing I think most of us can even remember, for the most part, is Antoine Fisher. Is that his name? Is it Fisher? I might have made a mistake on his last name. You guys let me know if it was Anton. What's up, Charles, Officer Faulkner? Might need to get you to weigh in on this later tonight if you're willing to come through. And anybody I mentioned earlier, most particularly if you're a father of sons, check it out. But let's look at this real quick. So this is WITN.com. Tennessee woman accused of 23 sex crimes involving 9 students at a high school, right? And this is one of those kind of things where, again, people, I've even heard fathers say, oh, man, ain't nothing. And I wish that was going on when I was a kid. You'd be surprised how much damage can happen psychologically and emotionally to someone who's underage. But let's read this one. So this is dated February of this year, Englewood, Tennessee, right? Tennessee woman is facing numerous charges after authorities said she sexually assaulted 9 high school students. Melissa Blair, 38, was indicted on 23 charges, including 18 counts of aggravated statutory rape, 4 counts of human trafficking by patronizing prostitution, and 1 count of solicitation of a minor, McMinn County Sheriff Joe Guy announced on Tuesday. Right? Hit the like button as you come in. Again, like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel. WVLT reports the Department of Children's Services notified detectives in early December that Blair had sexual encounters with boys who were students at McMinn County Central High School. Sheriff's office executed a search warrant at Blair's home on December 15th. She was then banned from the school property and activities. Right now, I just want to put this in your head, especially if you've ever had teenagers and you see, boys who are heartbroken about a girl or whatever. Right? Think about that in regard to a grown woman dealing with your child. Right? The search warrant revealed additional evidence, and our investigation grew larger as more parents and victims contacted us. Guy said there were 9 confirmed victims, and all of them were juveniles at the time. 2 are now adults. The alleged crimes occurred from early 2020 to late 2021. We suspect there may be additional juvenile victims, and we encourage them or their parents to contact us. Blair is accused of setting up meetings with the victims through social media and offering items in return for sexual favors. Wow. And there she goes. Right. Indicted on 23 counts, 18 of which are counts of aggravated statutory rape. She was released Tuesday evening on a $100,000 bond. Director of McMinn County Schools, Lee Parkinson, said that Blair was involved in booster clubs with the school. She had a student enrolled at the school that later transferred. Right. So there you go. Right. BGS in the house. Shout out to you. Shout out to Lil Mushu. Hope he's well. What's up, Tim? Blade Runner, what's going on? A few people in here. So let's look at another, right? This is also 2022. As a matter of fact, October 8th, 2022. Probe finds New York City teachers sent raunchy texts sexually preyed on students. Let's look at this. So reports from the Special Commissioner of Investigation for City Schools documented multiple cases of sexually charged behavior by female teachers. Right? School marms are going wild in New York. Newly released reports from the Special Commissioner of Investigation for City Schools documented multiple cases of shocking sexually charged behavior by female teachers and aides in city public schools, from bedding students to sending explicit photos to high schoolers to exposing bare breasts to remote learning 5-year-olds. Wow. Now, keep in mind, there has been an argument put forth that because of the dearth in teachers, that they've had to kind of bring in people that, with less vetting, so on and so forth. That being said, There have been arguments made that the people in the rooms are not as qualified, not as trained out of desperation. But according to this, you have issues ranging from bedding students to sending explicit photos to high schoolers to exposing bare breasts to remote learning 5-year-olds. Word. Shit. Natalie Black, 27, a teacher at Hillside Arts and Letters Academy in Queens, sent at least 15 raunchy snaps of herself in lingerie or nude to a 17-year-old male student beginning in late 2021. An SCI report said the boy was interviewed by the NYPD, but no charges were filed. By March 2022, the report found Black's bad behavior escalated. She showed male students photos of her vagina, pulled down her pants in a student's home, and told him to eat. Let's go ahead and put that on the screen. I'm not even ready to read that. I mean, that's just wow. Oh, I think they do have some pictures. I think we're gonna see some very interesting things in a minute from some of these. So she told him to eat her and sent kids videos of herself deep throating a liquor bottle and dancing naked from the waist down. Bam. Yeah, this is how wild this is. So this is Danielle Medellin, then 24, exchanged nearly 5,500 very flirtatious texts with a boy in her class. Hillside administrators never informed the school community of investigation, students said. Black refused. Okay, so Black, this is not, Danielle is not the one that they're talking about at this moment. So we'll see if they show Black's picture later. Black refused to cooperate with SCI investigators. She was removed from the DOE service while the probe was ongoing, the report noted, but remains a DOE employee according to her active LinkedIn page, which also sends readers to self-created videos of Black singing performances on YouTube. The SCI report recommended that Black be permanently removed from the DOE workforce, given her total unfitness as a pedagogue. Damn. The DOE declined to provide Black's employment status. This is Michelle Zach, 31, engaged in an inappropriate relationship with 2 other underage boys. So we haven't gotten to her yet. In another galling incident, Makita Brooks Stanton, a paraprofessional at PS 160 in Queens, took her phone along to a May 2020 doctor's visit, then stripped down for a breast exam in full view of her remote learning pre-kindergarten class. She even had the doctor say hi to the class on Google Meet, said a mortified mother who was monitoring the session over her 5-year-old shoulder. She was in her blue gown, and that's when she was exposed. The mom told the Post last week it was a frontal view. Brooks Stanton flashed the tots for about 2 minutes, said the mom, whose shouts eventually got the class's lead teacher to shut down the offending screen. Breast exposure to a pre-K class did not appear purposeful, SCI investigators concluded, but Brooks Stanton's actions showed a serious lack of professionalism. Felt really bad when I registered the complaint, the mother said. I think this was just a poor judgment call on her part. Brooks Stanton remains at PS 160, family said. And okay, so this is Natalie Black, right? This is the one I read earlier. That's Natalie Black. That's the one that apparently told a student to eat her out, pulled her pants down at a student's house, so on and so forth. That's her. Oh man. Yeah. Let's see. All right. So Danielle Medellin, the first picture I showed, then 24. Okay, that's what we read before. This is Makita Brooks, stripped down for a breast exam in full view of her remote learning pre-kindergarten class. So there we go. Makita Brooks. Really? I mean, come on. This is... Let's see. Zach declined to comment, as did Garofalo's attorney. The others did not respond to queries. Did I miss a section? No? Okay, so just went over a couple other cases. All right, hold on. 7 of the 21 substantiated SCI reports on sexual misbehavior in city schools released to the Post in the last 2 months involve female perpetrators, a ratio in line with the national average, according to the advocacy group Stop Educator Sexual Abuse, Misconduct, and Exploitation. Sesame. They They called it Sesame. Okay. It done really shifted the meaning of Sesame Street in this bad boy. It says, I'm outraged. Sesame founder Terry Miller told the Post, how dare these teachers who are put in a position of trust over our children violate that trust so egregiously. These incidents are going to put a mark of trauma on every single one of these children. Miller warned against the tendency to minimize the damage done by female teachers who prey on teen boys. Right? Studies find that boys offended by a female are more likely to suffer more severe psychological trauma, more likely to become addicted to alcohol and drugs, and more likely to drop out of school. Yeah. But again, we like to act like these things don't affect boys. You go to Tommy Curry's and Ebony Utley's paper, She Touched Me, one of the things you'll find that boys suffer the same psychological issues girls do when they're violated, most particularly underage, by an adult or an older female. It still happens. And the other thing that happens is you can arrest the development, the natural, organic sexual development of a young boy by traumatizing it with an experience that they're not ready for. And it can have a permanent psychological effect on how they engage others, how they negotiate relationships, and how they even interpret pleasure sexually based on that trauma. But again, the prevailing attitude is as long as boys have a wet hole, they have nothing to be concerned about. Right? So the finishing sentence is, this is a life-threatening trauma and injury that bad apple teachers are inflicting on our children, and they are children, Miller added. Damage done. All right, so you guys saw a number of the people there. Got a few more cases for you. Female Texas teacher who had sex with a 13-year-old boy in her classroom has 60-day jail stint delayed after she gave birth. Marka Bodine was found guilty of continued sexual abuse of a child under 14. The maximum sentence is life imprisonment, but she'll serve just 2 months, and Bodine won't have to report to jail till June 2023. As she recently gave birth, the child is not the result of the abusive sexual relationship with the teenage student. Many of these female teachers are married, right? Imagine finding out your wife is doing all of that with her elementary school, junior high, high school age students, right? Man, this is ridiculous. Texas teacher convicted of having sex with a 13-year-old student in her class during 3 years of abuse does not have to report to jail until next year. Kind of went through that a little bit. Hold on. The student, who is now 16, said Bodine befriended him by playing Fortnite. God damn. They're playing Fortnite? Wow. They are trolling Fortnite to find boys. Ain't that... His English teacher later began texting him, sending 25 to 40 explicit photographs of herself to the teen between April 2020 to February 2021. The abusive sexual relationship continued for over 2 years, with Bodine driving to her student's home 2 to 4 times a month until March 2021, when it eventually ended after he called the cops begging for help. The baby is not the result of Bodine's years-long relationship with one student. So there she goes. Right? Yep. He's convicted of abusing a male student. There. Right? The Tomball intermediate school teacher will spend the rest of her life on the sex offenders register. Her charge, continued sexual abuse of a child under 14, carries a maximum life sentence. Prosecutors had asked for a minimum 20 years behind bars. Christopher Downey, a criminal defense attorney, told ABC 13 that a possible contributing factor to her light sentence could be evidence of her mental state at the time of the abuse. I think no small part of an explanation for this sentence may lie in any psych info they provided to the court, Downey said, but noted that social factors likely had a hand in her fate. By all accounts, this is an unusual outcome. I'm sure that the gender of the person on trial, the fact that this was a woman accused of having sex with a young boy, that's going to factor into it as well, Downey said. The abused boy left the courtroom midway through sentencing as he was very upset with the outcome. Right. When was the last time you heard of a male who had violated an underage girl being given a light charge because of his mental state? Usually, mental state would suggest that he needs to be put somewhere where he's not a danger to the public, not released because of it. But somehow, when female sex offenders do this to boys, their mental state is apparently a factor. So y'all tell me how that works. Let me see what he had as soul. I may have mispronounced that. What he had as soul, asked Doc. Usually the boy tells on the teacher in these cases. Sometimes, and then sometimes you actually find that the parents find out, through texts. Sometimes others come forward and suggest they've seen inappropriate behavior in school. There's a lot of ways this comes out, but yeah, sometimes you have traumatized boys that go to their parents and talk about what's happened. Apparently this young man actually called the authorities himself and asked for help. But it's not supposed to matter, right? Because all boys need is a wet hole. They don't have any, Anyway, here's another. I can do this all day. Y'all know me. And if you've seen my Facebook page, I routinely post these. And I post them really just to kind of combat the idea that this doesn't happen often. And I believe it actually happens more than it's reported, as is generally the case for sexual assault of a variety of sorts. I think this happens quite a bit. But this is people.com. Let's see. Stop this here. Shout out to Tim Howard. Says not holding women accountable is why society is in ruins. Right? What's up, ghetto user? Shout out to you. There's support for you standing up for the black male. Much appreciated. Right? Thank you for that. All right. So, California teacher who sexually abused minor gets no jail time despite victim's mom's request for maximum penalty. Amanda Hubble pleaded no contest last month to 1 count of unlawful sexual intercourse and 1 count of oral copulation of a person under 18. Interesting. Former music teacher in Clovis. Now, Clovis, if you don't know, Central California is a city laid right next up to Fresno, where I am. So this is very close to home. Let me see. This is dated July of this year, July 29th of this year. Former music teacher in Clovis, California, has been sent to probation after pleading no contest to having sex with a 17-year-old student. People confirms that Amanda Hubble, 32, pleaded no contest last month to 1 count of unlawful sexual intercourse and so on and so forth. I read that earlier. Sentenced to 2 years of probation, must register as a sex offender, the whole deal. There she goes. Yeah. What's up, Growth Talk Podcast? Hope you're well. Good to see you in here. Right? That's what we're dealing with. AB Media, what's going on? Good to see you. See Melissa in here, what's going on? Yeah. That's what we're looking at. That's her. They're starting to show some of these pictures a little more often, and you're actually starting to see women being sentenced. But I don't think the court of public opinion has quite grasped the potential impact. And at least the last article did. The last article, at least mentioned the psychological impact on boys. But what you'll find in a lot of these articles too is that they'll be quick to remind you that this is still something that overwhelmingly happens from male teachers to female students. But again, I suspect that it actually happens more often. But again, we don't have a frame of reference. We've actually had 50 years of the public being taught, most particularly through media and through formal education, sexual assault workshops, so on and so forth. All of these things help to condition us, make us a little sensitive to a narrative that we readily understand and interpret. I think the opposite is misread in a lot of different ways. And I think at the end of the day, it costs us in terms of really kind of grasping how this affects boys. So this one is dated June of this year. Teacher accused of sexually abusing student after husband allegedly finds texts professing love. Right? Rebecca Kilps allegedly told police she was planning to leave her husband for the teen after his impending graduation. There she goes. You like to find that out when you come home and see your wife's phone, huh? 34-year-old former teacher in Wisconsin has been arrested on allegations she sexually abused a student after her suspicious husband allegedly uncovered illicit text messages she had sent to the teen. Rebecca Kilps, a former Spanish teacher at Two Rivers High School, who resigned from her position, appeared in court on Monday but did not enter pleas to charges she faces. People confirms that the Two Rivers Police Department that Kilps was arrested back on May 24th and charged with 3 felony counts of sex assault of a student by school staff. According to a police statement, the investigation into Kilps began on May 23rd when a detective was contacted by a tipster and told that a 34-year-old high school teacher engaged in sexual conduct with a 17-year-old student. Criminal complaint obtained by WBAY alleges Kilps' husband called the police the very next day. Fearing his wife was having an affair, the husband sifted through the text messages on her phone while she slept. When confronted with the text in which she allegedly spoke of a future with the recipient and told him she loved him, Kilps allegedly admitted to her husband the messages had been sent to a student. Right? WBAY reports the teen boy admitted to police he and Kilps first met his freshman year and that they had sex twice in her home, according to the complaint. She met with detectives and allegedly admitted she developed romantic feelings for the teen last October. So let me get this straight. She met him as a freshman, right? So they're not necessarily saying when things started. She had sex with him twice at her home. And she just developed feelings for him in October. Started to plan a life with him. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. I'm going to put all the links for this, these in the description. You guys can check them yourself. Now, there are a couple articles here that I thought were insightful in a whole nother way. This is actually a site for a law firm talking about the uptick with sex crimes in regard to female teachers. This is dated June of this year. Neil Davis Law Firm says increasingly female teachers are being charged with sex crimes that sometimes involve their students and other times do not. The latter was the case recently when a science teacher at a middle school in Springfield, Virginia was arrested and charged with possession of child pornography. None of the material featured any of her current or former students, authorities said. So just in case people want to argue that female teachers or women in general are not capable of engaging in child pornography, there you go. Police in Fairfax County reportedly had received a tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. That tip provided an IP address for someone in the county who possessed child pornography. This led police to the woman's home where she lived alone. Police reportedly found videos and photos of child sexual abuse on the Snapchat of the woman who was 28. She now faces 2 counts of possession of child pornography. She's also been suspended from her job, released from detention on a $2,000 unsecured bond. More female teachers arrested for child sex crimes. Still, more female teachers are also being arrested for sex crimes involving children. Usually, these involve a female teacher having a sexual relationship with an underage male student. According to Fox News, the Center for Sex Offender Management, which is run by the United States Department of Justice, says women in general, not just women teachers, account for about 10% of all sex crimes that are reported to authorities. And that's a critical line. That's a critical statement. 10% of all sex crimes that are reported. Again, we don't have a macro social outlook on the violation of boys, the sexual violation of boys by women. We do so for men. If you have a male teacher who's violating boys or girls, we have a framework for that. For women, not so much. However, when it comes to sex crimes committed by teachers against students, it's believed that as many as 30% of teacher-student sexual offenses are committed by women who sometimes strongly deny that they committed such actions. And that's even when they've actually found evidence. Trend of teacher arrests for child sex crimes in 2022. Recent analysis by Fox News Digital found that a smaller but still significant number of female teachers have been arrested for child sex crimes in 2022. That analysis, which only included cases that have been publicized, found that at least 135 teachers, teachers' aides, and substitute teachers have been arrested so far this year for child sex-related crimes in the U.S. Such crimes occurred in 41 different states between January and May of this year, 2022, and have included child porn, as well as sexual assault or sexual abuse of students. Slightly more than 3/4 of the crimes were committed directly against students. Of the 135 publicized sex crimes committed by teachers, the analysis showed that 105 were committed by male teachers and 30 were committed by female teachers. Right? Kind of goes from there. Again, I'll post all of this in the description. It says female teachers' punishments may differ. Some studies show that women have received more lenient punishments than males who have committed the same crime due to a societal double standard that is less forgiving of male teachers who sexually abuse students. Now, I've talked about this before. You'll find, UCLA report suggesting years ago that men are punished with 65% longer sentences than women for the same crimes across the board. This is accounting for sex crimes, but you're seeing the same dynamic. We have a sort of public chivalry that we perform in regard to how we even interpret female initiated crimes, let alone how they're sentenced. And we've seen historically women actually get off having committed egregious crimes, even over things like having a period. Right? Says, although the potential criminal penalties are the same regardless of gender and the allegation actions are similar, in many cases, female teacher offenders face lighter criminal penalties than their male counterparts, reports the website Leo Weekly. There is no shortage of cases that highlight the leniency attractive female teachers receive for their crimes. So not just female teachers, but attractive female teachers. Right? However, women too can receive high fines and lengthy prison sentences for child sexual assault, for child sexual abuse, or child sexual abuse. And upon release, they may have to register as a sex offender, which can hamper their ability to get a job and choose a place to live. Right? Texas laws on child sex crimes can be severe. Okay, I think we can skip those and kind of go from there. So what he had as Soul says, it's amazing how many female predators that have been in the school system. They have too much power there, no fair punishment. See Mary Kay Letourneau. Indeed, Mary Kay Letourneau is probably one of the most famous. If I remember correctly, she actually did do time for that, came out, married a young man who had now reached adulthood, had children with him, whole deal. Sankara says, one day I hope to tell you about my journey to the motherland from you, Haitian brother Ayibobo. Okay. All right. Well, appreciate that donation. Let me see. I'm not Haitian, but I don't know if that's what you meant. So, but anyway, shout out to you, brother. Appreciate the support. All right. This is what we're looking at. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the chat. And if you're interested in coming up, whether that means you are sharing your own experience or you want to talk about the issue and what you may be able to bring to bear on it so we can kind of engage it, you're welcome to come on up. Because this is something that I think we need to talk about. We need to get better at. Y'all know, usually every year I engage this on one level or another at least a couple of times because I think it needs to be part of the discussion. As a father of a son, I came to understand the vulnerability of young boys in a way that I didn't even remember it in myself. Right? It's one of the differences between just reflecting on your own upbringing versus being a parent. Sometimes you actually can see innocence manifest in your own child in a way that you couldn't even see it in yourself. So shout out. We got Colonel Faulkner. How you doing, man?
Whoa!
How you doing, brother?
Just cooking while listening to you. I'm going to tell you what's very disturbing about the legal, justice system.
Mm-hmm.
That women do no wrong and men do no right.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know this? When I first came on the department, it took years in litigations and legislation before men could legally be considered raped.
Wow.
And the reason why is because it was classified as the unwanted or non-consensual entering of a vagina.
Mm.
And remember how it's always cool and casual for people to joke about what happens to men in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Don't drop the soap. It's comical.
Right.
But if it's a female, it's true.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, we don't want to talk about how many of these teachers and other monsters get away with the same crimes and actually charge the family if she gets pregnant child support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's crazy because a lot of these young boys, if you speak to them, they will tell you their first sexual experience was when
Yes.
9, 10, 11. And guess who it's from? It's not the creepy uncle. It was the cute little babysitter.
Yes.
It's this the older friend.
Mm-hmm.
You know how many of my wrestlers came out and told me that?
Yep.
Like, I'm 10 years old. I didn't know what I did. I kind of liked it. I kind of didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I thought years ago, years later, he was like, I didn't know she took advantage of me.
Right. Right.
And notice, you don't hear them called monsters and pedophiles and other names.
You'll actually have grown men argue with you about whether or not it's any kind of violation.
And that's sick. I
Mm-hmm.
have a 15-year-old son. What the hell does a grown woman need to do with him?
Right.
Let a child be a child. I think we, especially in today's time, we exacerbate the problem that we have this heightened sense of sexuality. Nobody's allowed to be a child anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we increase it tenfold because look at your child's favorite musical artist.
Right.
Insert video here. I mean, really,
Mm-hmm.
I'm only a 40-year-old man.
Mm.
I'm thinking back to when I was young. We didn't have this weird needing to teach children who are in preschool and first grade sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell a lot of people, if you have kids, have an open dialogue with your children.
Right.
Stop this, stop snitching stuff because guess what's going to happen? When something happens to your child, they're going to be so embedded that they're going to be scared to tell you or an adult.
Right. Right.
They're
Especially if
still
they
going
need.
I go ahead, Doc.
No, especially if they really need to.
Exactly. There's there's so many times I've been to, suspected sexual assault cases and things of that nature, even for children. Because I know in Baltimore and the Baltimore City Police and the Baltimore Police Department, it's so detailed that children have to go to what is it? Children have to go to University of Maryland
Mm-hmm.
if they were violated, and women would have to go to Mercy because
Yeah.
those are the two specialists for that. But yeah, you just see a lot of this stuff, and these women are just thinking it's fine. Like, oh, I could get it, and they have this nonchalant attitude that they're going to get away with it.
Yeah. That's because they often do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me get AB to weigh in on some of this. What's up, AB?
Hey, what's going on, Dr. T? Charles? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead. Give us
There's so much I want to say about this. Well, first off, I have a simple question. How many R. Kellys have to be created before we fix this problem?
Wow.
Yeah, I went there.
Yeah.
How many R. Kellys have to be created before we fix this problem? Because that's one of the big reasons why I said that documentary was a huge mistake.
Okay.
Because before then, I didn't know that he got abused by one of his female relatives.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
I
as
believe
far
it
as
was.
these teachers, man, particularly in the ones that are doing it that are in my age bracket, 30 and up,
Mm-hmm.
it's sickening to me because, well, I don't know what it was like when you was growing up, Charles, but all my teachers were old and married when I was growing up. That it didn't even come up.
Mm.
Some of them were still hot, but it still didn't come up.
I would bet money that it happened nonetheless. But there was one, we didn't have social media.
Yeah.
And that
Oh,
changed.
it happened. My cousins told me stories. It happened.
Yeah, it happened. And then the other thing too, again, we didn't have a frame of reference for female sexual offenders. We didn't have a frame of reference for that. So,
You
but
always
go
thought
ahead.
it was some dude. That's like when I got to high school. they always pretended that the guys would be the ones that try to motivate you to go screw a chick. And when I got to high school, it was the polar opposite.
Right.
It was the girls.
Right.
That be rubbing up on you, trying to grab your private parts. I'm like, oh, I was like, okay, this is not what I expected at all.
Right. Right. But if you ran around grabbing girls' private parts, what
Oh
happened?
yeah, I had an incident because of that, but it is what it is.
What it is. Right. So that's the problem.
I didn't get any major trouble
Would
for it.
have been president.
What did you say, Charles?
I said it. If he was white, he would have became president.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. And I'm gonna tell you, like, I'm sorry for cutting in. I'm gonna give the floor right back to you, AB.
Mm-hmm.
See, I always tell people this, and they try to debunk me till they go back in their own lives and reflect. I'll put $1,000 down if majority of the men on this panel and this chat, your first sexual experience doesn't even have to be intercourse. It was from a very sexually aggressive girl, but yet still carry this notion that women are these maid Marian types.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we go, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Finish your thought.
I just wanted to refer to Charles talking about people don't just stop snitching campaign. First of all, I don't know why anybody's still snitching today, because everybody knows anybody's still gangbanging is snitching anyway. So what's the big deal? What y'all having that no snitching policy for? Everybody knows they're snitching at the cops anyway. What are y'all doing? I don't understand why snitching still stop snitching is still a thing.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Oh, well, let's go ahead and get Ian in this conversation. Ian.
Oh yeah, man. I think that like you said before, how you doing, Charles? How you doing, AB? Now see, you mentioned the innocence of the child. That's something, since I've been, dealing with your content, I kind of regret the fact that I wasn't told or instructed to value my innocence.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that, it's funny because that's something I've been dealing with recently, and I'm like, what would my life have been had I not been geared towards this hypersexual lifestyle or view of I have to have a woman, and whether or not I have been with a woman or not, or I was with a woman, that's something that's placed in your psyche, that's something that you will always need and always require as part of your manhood, and that's unfortunate,
right?
Because it kind of blinds us from what our true purpose is as men to some degree, and it causes a lot of the consternation between our relationships with other men as well. So that's something that I wanted. I wish that my father and other men had told me, honor your sexuality, and don't just see yourself as someone to chase women.
No, absolutely. I think it was one of the reasons I was extremely forward about protecting my son's innocence. I wanted to make sure that I was in constant conversation with him about what may happen when he's staying at someone else's house for the night, what's going on, what to look out for, what to communicate about. I was very forward about that. And I'll tell you why. I mentioned this a little earlier, but I want you guys to actually listen to a quote. So this is a bit of a review, I would say, of the paper I mentioned earlier by Tommy Curry and Ebony Utley. She touched me 5 snapshots of adult sexual violations of Black boys, right? So you can see a picture of Dr. Curry there. Scroll down a little further. You see a picture of Dr. Utley, right? And there's a particular quote I wanted to kind of read to you guys so you can see what I'm talking about. It said, it has been long documented that Black Americans report having their
Sorry.
Go ahead and mute your mic for a minute. It's been long documented that Black Americans report having their first sexual experiences at younger ages than their white American counterparts. Black males have the earliest sexual debut of any group in the United States. Black boys often report first intercourse between 12 and 14 years of age. Sexual debut of their peer girl group is much later, so their first intercourse is likely with older women. Earliest studies conducted by white social scientists in the mid 20th century interpreted the earlier age of sexual debut amongst blacks as evidence of their racial inferiority, lack of morality, and hypersexuality. These mid 20th century studies observed that black males were the group most likely to have the earliest first sexual intercourse when compared to white males and females, as well as black females. These studies were often used as evidence of the hypersexuality of black men and boys, and attributed the early sexual debut of Negro boys to promiscuity, the cultural delinquency of black families, and the innate hypersexual nature of the Negro race. Right? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts about that.
Go ahead.
Did you see that video that white chick put out with her daughter about probably a week or so ago?
I'm not sure. What was it?
She said, if you ever get lost, find a big black man.
Oh, yeah. I did. I see. I know. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I did share it with you. But
but let me also say this though, in relation to this particular piece here. Understand when he says, or when they write, I should say, that the earliest sexual intercourse is happening between the age of 12 and 14.
Yeah, that's about right.
What'd you say?
That's about right.
Well, yeah, but understand, they're talking about intercourse, right? Sexual engagement, sexual assault does not have to be intercourse based. So when we talk about having their first experiences, because Cody in the chat said something very interesting. He said, my earliest was 5 years old. It doesn't have to be intercourse. It can be touching. It can be all kinds of things. So if intercourse is happening at 12, what exactly is happening earlier than that? And I myself experienced that as early as about 3 years old. These things happen to black boys earliest. And one of the things I talk about in my Black male studies class is I show the way black men and boys are interpreted often as what I call walking phallices. We are dicks. We are actively considered as such by groups all over the world, actually, that not only perceive African men, but Black American men, most particularly, as that. We are walking sexual phallices, right? We are fetishized on the basis of this. And I bring this up because I remember years ago I had a debate with a colleague, a feminist colleague of mine, and she argued, I can't remember how we got to the subject, but we started talking about, sexual fetishes. We started talking about the fetishization of black women in particular. And when I made comment about black men, she laughed and she said, do you honestly think you can say anything about, being a sexual object to me? And I was like, black men have been the standard for being a sexual object, most particularly in this country.
Yep.
But how black men get erased from the conversation around sexual objectification is very interesting, because we feminized anything related to sex or gender. That's the first thing. And then we victimized, of course, those who have experienced some type of trauma along those lines. But black men get erased. So it's an interesting way intersectionality kind of plays with the categories to downplay and completely make invisible male experiences. But if you actually look at the research, and one of the texts I would recommend you check out if you haven't, oh my goodness, I use it in my class. Let's see if I brought it over here. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Rethinking Rufus. Hold on.
Rethinking Rufus. That's interesting.
Yeah, I know that guy. That guy. Yeah, he wrote about slavery and how black men were raped during slavery as well.
Yeah. Rethinking Rufus. This is a book written by Thomas Foster. Interesting text. I use it in my black male class. It actually deals with the objectification, really, of black men during slavery. And he's very, very clear in how this has taken place over years. And he documents everything empirically. So he's actually using stories that have been transcribed hundreds of years ago in some instances, where you hear people talk about their experiences directly. So this objectification of black men is not new, but the lack of dialogue about it, even in the academy, even in conversations about slavery, even in conversations about sexualization, so on and so forth, heavily downplayed. And that's contributed to this legacy of seeing black boys as nothing but dicks. And the treatment of black boys is being oblivious to any type of trauma brought on by early sexual contact. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was watching Iyanla Vanzant, because I used to watch the shows, because sometimes you could get some revealing things about real people in real life. And in one show, she had a show of brothers who are mostly gay. There's a bunch of brothers. All of them were the majority of them were gay. It might have been all of them, but she talked about how you are a black man before you're a gay male, because they were putting their sexuality first before their actual human identity, And what I found, in most of the cases when you're dealing with gay black men, from me, because and I'm in Atlanta, what I'm saying? So I've had friends that I didn't even know were gay. I mean, they're just plentiful, right? So but in the majority of the cases, it was that they were sexually molested or raped as a child. Okay. And when they were speaking about it on the show, they took offense because they tried to act as if somehow that early sexual experience did not play a part in their sexual identity, and they were like, no, we can't allow that, because they were trying to go with the prevailing narrative that it's just you were just born that way. But my problem has always been, that's fine if you whatever you believe about that, but when you're pushing that so hard, we're not allowed to deal with the actual violence that these children endure that actually move them in that direction.
Right.
That's actually why I'm very careful when I talk about transformers, because I've heard a lot of them talk about their stories, and a lot of them talk about how they were abused as kids, getting abused by everybody as kids, even the preacher.
Yeah, I'm going to say this. If a lady can get off because of her mental disposition, why is R. Kelly in jail?
Ooh.
Because if you really think about it, I cannot criminally charge somebody who's not in total control of their faculties. So why is he why hasn't anybody gotten him help? One, black men are always the workhorses. We're the bucks. If we're making money, everybody turns a blind eye.
Yep.
Right.
If you're not used to it, you go back to the stables or the glue factory.
God damn. Yeah.
And I mean, when you think about it, people be like, oh, you're condoning him, he should be out. No, I did not say that. But going by the same criteria, because the law has to be equal to all parties, allegedly. Why is he in jail if they've done tests and seen his background of being abused?
Okay.
Abuse people.
I don't know. Yeah.
That was a better question. You're gonna throw him in jail. Why aren't some of these parents in jail for giving the kids to him?
Well, yeah. But we have to, I want people to think about this on a larger scale. If we think about, as what you guys have intimated, think about R. Kelly as how might we put it, a symptom of a larger set of practices, right? I mean, if we know Kelly himself went through this, I think it was his older sister, if I remember correctly, that violated.
That was one of his older cousins, but that sounds about right.
But violated him and his brother, right? And may have actually had something to do with the trajectory of his ailment, right? And it's interesting to me how that gets downplayed in the conversation, as if it's not a factor, as if it didn't happen. And I think that's important that we begin to look at that, because these are the kind of things that men are dealing with that nobody wants to talk about. And it's time we do. It is past time that we do. Because if anything, we need to give men a language and a comfort with being able to talk about these experiences. Every time I talk about these things publicly, I always get a message, and especially if I do it publicly, somebody will come pull me to the side And they'll say things like, I can't believe you talked about that. I can't believe, and they'll eventually begin to share the things that they've experienced. And 9 times out of 10, it's right up this alley. But again, there's often no place for them to talk about these things and be taken seriously. They'll be ridiculed by men and women for talking about these issues, to the point where many men won't even come forward and talk about it at all.
Well, this is a humanization process, because like I said, I've said before, I've become much more human since engaging you and your content and having conversation. I've become much more human. I've seen myself in much more of a human capacity than I have before. And I've started to empathize more with other Black men more. Where before the brotherhood was based on bravado, now the brotherhood is based on empathy, and sympathy, right? And with Ron O'Neal, black male empowerment, wanting to empower other Black men. And when you mention R. Kelly, not only his sister but his mother, because he told a story about how his mother used to take his cup. She used to walk him to school. She was a single mother. She actually was a nurse though, right?
Okay.
But she was a single mother. She used to drink out of his. She used to put on red lipstick, right? This is just to walk him to school. She used it, so it was kind of this what do you call it, grooming process, where she would drink out of his cup and put the red lipstick on his cup, and purposely, and he would turn the cup around, and he would drink from where the lipstick was, almost like they were kissing.
Wow.
Yeah, and in that case, you can go to even to more extreme, like that's not extreme enough. Jim Jones, where his mother, was tongue kissing him, teaching him how to kiss, how to French kiss a female. Why is your mother teaching you how to be a concuserve to females?
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. There's been talks about how mothers, how can I say this? I'm trying to stay educational. How mothers pimped out their sons and daughters, especially their sons to their friends.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And we don't like to talk about these uneasy things. Like this has been my career for almost 2 decades. Shit. I mean, really, you got to think about it. And it's not just the act; it's the willingness to lie.
Oh yeah.
Out of 10 years of law enforcement, 10 years in the military, literally, I've only had one. I'm not saying that nobody else had more, but out of my career, I've only had one actual factual sexual assault. All of them are founded. All the rest of them are unfounded. And they would tell me they lie. Oh, I just traded sex for drugs. Oh, I was mad, but it was consensual.
Right.
Because they know there's a certain power demographic. And think about this. I remember one guy telling me he was 15, 16, and he was being paid to help move some stuff for the, mom's friend, the neighbor. She came down in some revealing lingerie and bent over right in front of him to say, either put it in, or I'm going to tell everybody you tried to take it from me.
Yeah, something similar happened to Tyler Perry.
Man, that's scary.
I mean, how many times have young men probably experienced that?
And the problem for me too, because you had recently, I don't know if you guys know about the case where a husband was killed by a black man. He was killed by his wife because just the accusation, right? Because she ran a daycare or something. Just the accusation that he had done something with the kids. She went to her conference because I guess he kind of had some kind of high profile job. He was at a conference. She went to his hotel, traveled to the hotel, didn't bother to ask him anything, shot him and killed him.
Mm.
You know, this and so this is the seriousness that women know to take as far as what men do, but we don't have that same level of seriousness with regard to how women are abusing and raping boys in particular.
Yeah. And we've seen this take place with scores of celebrities, and I don't mention celebrities just for the sake of that, but at the end of the day, they're talking about these things on a platform most people can't reach, and yet we still find a way to downplay them. I mean, we could talk about look, I have a short list here of black male celebrities who've experienced various types of sexual assault, most particularly when they were young. You got Ike Turner, Richard Pryor, Sugar Ray Leonard, Iceberg Slim, R. Kelly, as we talked about, MC Shan, Chris Brown, Bow Wow, D. Ray Davis, Lil Wayne, Tyler Perry, Columbus Short, Charlemagne the God, Mike Tyson, Antoine Fisher, Kashif, DMX, Lecrae, Denzel
Short
Curry,
list.
Chris Gardner, Don Lemon, Rasan Patterson, Terry Crews.
That's an awfully long short list.
You see what I mean? And I did that just off the head one day, writing a short piece that I was doing. So there, as far as, those who haven't come forward, there's so many stories, but there has to be an environment conducive to receiving that and engaging it seriously. Because you have a lot of men that really don't want to risk their, not only their reputation, but hell, even their psychological well-being, exposing something that traumatic to a public that doesn't give a damn and doesn't take it seriously.
Black men have no rights that anybody in the world has to adhere to.
Yeah. Tell me something. Tell me if you guys can hear this real quick. If I press this button. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
Horrible looking women.
Can you guys hear that real quick?
Yes.
You could?
Yeah.
All right. Let me show you. Let me see if I can get away with this. Let me see if I can get away with this real quick. I'll play you a clip. This is comedian D. Ray Davis.
Fair use.
Huh?
Fair use.
Fair use. Thank you. Talking about his experience.
Fair use. Go ahead.
I don't know what to. Maybe because I've been put in a situation.
You guys hear that?
Mm-hmm.
And people always say that to me. You don't know what it felt like to. I've been, as a young guy, my mother's friends my mother was involved in a lot of stuff, but I've had older women who thought I wasn't being parented correctly, slightly try to take advantage of me, and not slightly, have taken advantage of me.
You lost your virginity to 2 30-year-olds?
Yeah.
At the same time?
Yeah, 2 ugly, horrible looking women.
And you were?
What was I?
You were how
Why
old?
is he laughing?
11.
Yeah, it's not funny.
I had no hair on me.
Right.
I remember not having, and it was disgusting. And to this day, it's difficult for women to get me to go down. It's difficult. The girls that have had it, you're welcome. But it's hard. It's hard for me. It's hard for me to go down, man, because I remember what it was like down there. It was like a scary jungle. It was a terrible place to be. It was a terrible place to be, and they were like taking turns. I was just happy to be up, and it made my Kool-Aid taste different.
Now, can you imagine an environment where you have to make the interviewer, the cameraman, and maybe even the audience laugh so that you can talk about one of the most traumatic experiences of your lifetime?
Yeah.
Can you imagine a woman who's been sexually violated coming up and having to make the audience laugh just so that she can actually tell people what happened to her? See, we've created an environment for one context so that it has resonance with us as a public. For the other, no. And if you could see, I can't play the video, obviously, but I tried to capture a little bit of it in the picture you see in front of you. Look at his face.
He's already heard about it.
He's upset.
Yeah, that's not resolution there. That's trauma.
That's being conflicted.
Yeah. But this is what we're talking about. Go ahead.
We're not allowed to have a bad day as a black boy or black man. We're not allowed to express love to each other. We're not allowed
Right.
to feel pain. We're not allowed to feel sorrow. We're barely allowed to breathe.
Right.
Let's
Mhm.
keep it 100% funky. Like I said earlier, this is the equivalent of the don't drop the soap joke.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He said he didn't want to be there. He said, think about it. He could be with a very lovely, beautiful girl
Mm-hmm.
and looking at her vagina, and he's sexually, ready. And that when something hits you so hard that you're like, no, that's trauma.
Yeah.
It's for the longest time, black men were not allowed to feel trauma.
Right. Right.
And it took years for even the VA for me to admit you have PTSD. And I'm like, no shit.
Yeah.
Did you see what I see? And for some reason, they have this notion where, especially for black men, you don't feel pain like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
It's this birth of a nation
Yes.
false narrative
Right.
that has stuck with us for over 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
The lies. How many black men are in somebody's tree yet to be found because of a damn lie?
Mm-hmm.
And you might have been the one being abused.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Damn lie.
Yeah.
And look at his face. He's trying to make light of it to cope. But
Right.
that's a lot of unresolved anguish.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Ian, any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's, and like I said, it's kind of upsetting that the guy was laughing so much. You know what I'm saying? That it
Mm-hmm.
was that was kind of hurtful to see in response that he's so off his, that he's so entertained by that. You know, that
Mm-hmm.
it's very upsetting, and you can see to some degree, and I wanted to say before, part of his soul is gone and cannot be restored. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And for me, what I realize is that a lot of black women understand that we have a missing piece, and
Yeah.
that's part of how they're able to manipulate us the way that they do, because they know there's a part of us that's missing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like they have some kind of psychological hold over us, because that's essentially what happens when you become a victim of violence, sexual or otherwise, and the person knows it. They keep a leash around your neck,
Right.
and black women have a leash around our neck because they understand that we've been violated to the highest degrees, and that's how we continue to cave in to their, let me be frank, to their fuckery
Mm.
and their mental and physical abuse without a lot of pushback, because just like you see on his face, there's a blankness. We don't know that we should give pushback. You know, we don't know that we're allowed to defend ourselves.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. But I'll tell you on another level, one of the things that I found is the more we are able to talk about this full-throated and unapologetically, the more license you give somebody else to do it. Most particularly, yet again, people that look just like you. So black males, the more we talk about it, the more they're willing to come forward, and you can actually begin to address some of this trauma, right? To release it, to engage it. There is something healing about being able to talk about it and have people receive you, especially other brothers that have been through it. And this is one of the reasons I started with Dr. Curry's work, or I didn't start with it, but why we went to it, because you start to find this is not an isolated incident, and it's not just you. And that's the value of looking at some of the data. It's not. So even though much of the research has not yet caught up to the actual degrees of male sexualization or male sexual objectification, sexual assault, we haven't actually caught up to where it is, particularly in the black community. At least we know it's there. And the other reason we have to be able to talk about it is because there hasn't been a stigma associated with the violation of boys. It's often viewed as a rite of passage. It's viewed as something that older women and girls bestow on young boys. And again, it doesn't have to be full on, penetration. So it can go as young as 3 years old.
Doctor, can you keep, there's some things, going on in the background. Can you say that again for the Negroes in the back who didn't hear you?
Look, I'm saying that these types of sexual assaults can go as young as 3 years old. And I'm saying this from personal experience. And there's no frame of reference for it. So men and women will talk about this as some sort of rite of passage that boys should feel grateful for, even if they're psychologically traumatized. And there are no centers for them to go to. The only center they have to go to is prison or juvenile detention when they act out, which is actually fairly normal for people who've been traumatized and have no means to resolve it. And how would they resolve it if nobody takes it seriously? So even within the Black community, the sexual, violation of Black boys and young men, most particularly, but even adult men, is not even seen as a thing. It just happens. So if it's not, there's no stigma attached to it. How would we exactly have the numbers on it? How will we know about it? I mean, if you read She Touched Me by Curry and Utley, they'll tell you there's a dearth of research on this area regarding Black boys and men. There's virtually none because nobody considers it an issue. So we can talk at length about girls and women, and we should, if people are being genuinely violated. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not suggesting there is. But one of the reasons we may not have as much data around boys and men is because we haven't even regarded it as an issue worthy of attention. So maybe it isn't that boys are just dramatically, lower in numbers in terms of being violated. Maybe it's just that we haven't asked the question.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just like the Duluth model, as we know that that the numbers of the men who were being abused just weren't even counted. So then you have this skewed number of women, to men making it look like men were complete monsters. It's
Right.
because you didn't regard the men as human enough to be able to see that they could also be victimized in that way. And so that they were able to do that. So that's essentially what we're doing. We have to drum up amongst ourselves, this level of humanity and push our voices forward to say, hey, we need you to start doing the research on this, and then eventually put this into law, into institution, so that we can start protecting and being protected, especially our young boys.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I ran across this problem a couple of years ago, but I was reminded of it today. I talked to a young brother who was a student of mine. Oh God, maybe over, 10, 12 years ago. And he's trying to do his doctorate and he's interested in doing Black male studies. And so he reached out to me to ask me if I could give him some insight on what direction to go and how to navigate politically. And one of the things I had to share with them is I have had a number of Black male graduate students over the last 7-8 years who have had to seek me out because they want to do research on these types of issues and how they impact Black boys. But they're stymied because the only people on their committee that deal with Black gender or Black sexuality are more often than not Black feminists. And Black feminists, unless you're going to approach this in a Black feminist manner, or you're going to use bell hooks as your starting point,
Oh
unless
gosh.
you're willing to do that, you're actually seen as a bit of a problem. So I can't tell you how many young men have come out to me and said, look, man, I really want to get this degree, but I got this person on my committee who's threatening to get me kicked out of the university if I don't do this paper along the lines that she wants me to do it. And I'll actually serve on committees just to be a sort of bulldog to protect them ideologically so that they have the space to do this. But there's so many ways these graduate students can be assaulted as students, right? There's so many ways it can happen. They can get pushed out, they can be pressured out, they can be low graded and pushed out along those lines. And even if they graduate, they can have someone on their committee bad mouthing them when they're out on the job trying to find searches, right? I told you guys a couple of weeks ago, I even had a scholar who I interviewed on this show, who's the only brother I know of dealing with research on Black males who are victims of sexual trafficking. The only brother I know. He reached out to me and asked me to pull his name from the show we did because he's been assaulted by feminists to such a degree in terms of his public reputation that they're trying to prevent him from getting jobs. And why? Simply because he talked about Black boys and their vulnerability to the sexual trafficking marketplace, something no one else really does. That's all. So here you have scholars who are trained, who are doing the work, who are being publicly maligned because of the work they're doing, and then you have graduate students who want to do the work but are already being maligned in their programs. I know brothers who've been pushed out of their programs altogether. They've done years of coursework, they've taken exams, they've started to write theses or dissertations and been pushed out at that late stage in the process, having taken loans to get that far, and now they have to start over in a whole new field. I can't tell y'all how many brothers who are professors have reached out to me over the last 10 years and told me stories about how they themselves are in positions, they're teaching, some of them are even tenured, but they're worried about speaking out because their reputations and their ability to actually progress in their fields are hampered by mostly feminist, Black feminists in particular, colleagues that are basically not willing to allow them to do this kind of work. So when you ask the question why this research doesn't come out, there's a lot of levels to the answer as to why. But go ahead.
I mean, we have to remain the Black male boogeyman for them, right? Because that's at essence the ground floor from which they walk on to do the things that they do in academia and in institution. They have to have the Black male boogeyman, right? Yeah. That is the magic key to all their funding, all the research, everything that they are resolves around the Black male boogeyman. So they cannot allow anything to overturn or upset that narrative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And humanizing Black men is what will overturn that narrative.
Yeah. And the starting point actually has to be humanizing Black men to other Black men.
Yes.
That's the beginning point of that conversation. Something you said earlier, Ian, that I think was so important. You talked about the way in which we have to be able to do that. How did you put it in such a way I can't even quote what you said exactly, but how did you say that? Damn. Oh man, I'm sorry. I missed how you said it. It just hit me how profound it was, but it had to do along the lines with what we're talking about. Actually, for Black men to engage each other with a certain level. Oh, that's what I think you said in terms of empathy. You talked about Black men actually engaging each other with empathy,
yes,
as opposed to I don't know if you said hostility or
versus bravado.
Bravado. Okay, absolutely. Right. We're trained to compete with one another, to downplay one another, so on and so forth. But actually being able to empathize with one another, to actually be able to work in solidarity with other Black men.
Right.
That's one of the major reasons why I'm here. I'm interested in seeing if there are ways that Black men across the political spectrum, the religious spectrum, whatever life ideology one lives by, is there a way we can find some commonality in some of our experiences so where we can take whatever small amount that is and make it a focal point of how we can change the quality of our lives, Black men and boys. Can we do that? Right? I mean, even on this panel, you got a police officer, media analysts, you got all, brothers of all kinds of backgrounds. What can we actually begin to do with one another along these lines? So, those are the kind of questions I'm interested in asking. But any other thoughts about this? Go ahead and do, some closing thoughts about any of this. And I'll just go in the reverse order y'all came in. We'll start with Brother Ian. Any closing thoughts about this, man?
Yeah, I think that because I remember one of the concepts is you brought up for us is that black women harassing Black men or sexual harassment is also when Black women threaten us with calling the police and violence and things on the job and so on and so forth. So it's I think black women have this, going with the show. Black women have a hypersexuality that comes out in an aggressive manner in terms of shutting down our humanity, right? It's so they don't want to admit that they're hypersexual. They don't want to admit that. So
Yeah.
the way that it shows up is basically continually trying to dehumanize it, whether it's on a personal basis, on the workplace, or in the academy. It's pure sexual harassment, and we, because we've been violated so many times, we have this blank space, like the brother, and we just don't understand. You know, how did we get here
Yeah.
in this place?
Yeah.
So yeah, man, it's a good show, man. So yeah.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. AB, weigh in on this, man. Any closing thoughts, reflections, and hell, anything you would say to brothers that have been through something like this? Anything that you want to get out there?
Yeah, the brothers who have been through stuff like this, try to talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You can't talk to one of your family members. I understand what that's like.
Mm.
Reach out to somebody and try to talk to them if you've been sexually violated or something like that. And as I said in my opening statement, how many R. Kellys do we have to create before we fix this problem?
Yeah.
That's all I got.
No, and that's real too, because I think there's another angle to what you brought up when you mentioned R. Kelly. You're talking about something, things like sexual addiction, right?
Yes.
And that can also be a trauma response to early sexual contact, where one develops an unhealthy relationship to the very idea of sex, the very way their brain processes pleasure. All of that can be altered at a very early age when experiencing different types of sexual trauma.
Real
That
quick.
lead to this kind of addiction. Go ahead.
Real quick. When I first got to high school, I didn't think about groping girls at all. By my junior year, I had gotten groped so much, I started groping girls.
Okay.
So that's how. So that's very true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it is. But if you reach a point where it not only becomes a part of your identity, but you can't even engage someone.
You can't even process it.
Well, you can't process it, but you can't even have certain types of relationships without having sexual contact. There might be a problem. I mean, look, if you say, I want to be in a sexually, stimulating, deep relationship or marriage, nothing wrong with that. But if every contact has to be sexualized and you have experienced these types of trauma, you might need some type of treatment. You might need some type of therapy, some type of, analysis. But, looking at R. Kelly, we can clearly see there's more going on than just what he's being accused of on the surface. But if there's no empathy enough for black men to be looked at, that's the problem. Go ahead.
Can I say one thing to that? Because two when we talk about therapy, because that's a must. And for me, I understand, in my own experience, hypersexuality was keep going back to these experiences was me just to keep. The addiction is going back, trying to, like, you're going back in the past, like you can actually keep having this. Is like you're trying to get it right.
Yes.
And you're addicted to trying to get it right. So that's part of where the addiction is. Let me keep doing it until it feels better. And people can see that and know that you need that. You need to feel better. And particularly black women, they can take advantage of that.
I mean, we've heard about and talked about the way women experience these traumas, and it is valid in many instances where this is something they experience. We just have a way of just kind of suggesting implicitly that men don't experience it, boys don't experience it. And if they do, it's some, infinitesimally small group, so they're not really worthy of. But when you actually start talking to black men, you find out that this is actually really common. And it's just accepted. That's the difference. It's just accepted, right? Because I know in terms of the D-Ray interview I played, I don't know about the cameraman who was laughing, but I know the person interviewing him was not black, and it was readily received as comedy. In the black community, I don't think the reaction, most particularly, when you start talking about women, I don't think the reaction is quite as visceral. If this were a young woman talking about having been violated by two male friends of her father, I don't think this would have been received anywhere near as comedy. But let me get Officer Faulkner, who is now Colonel Faulkner. I want to get your closing thoughts, and I also want you to tell people about your channel and the new business that you started before you completely close out. But start out with your closing thoughts about this issue, especially as a police officer.
My thoughts about this, it's perplexing sadness. That there's some people who need the help the most will get it the least. I'm going to speak to anybody who's ever been through anything abusive. Number one, it's not your fault. I just want you to know who's ever been abused any time in their life, do not blame yourself. It's not your fault. Go get help, professional help. Talk to someone.
Right.
Always have an open dialogue. Do not try to hurt yourself. Your life is precious.
Right. Right.
Absolutely. You should always treat it as such. And we need to be more caring. We need to have not just sympathy, but empathy for Black boys and men.
Right.
We are public enemy number one in the face of the world. And we still stand. If you're going through some issues or some tragedies, remember, tomorrow's a better day.
Right.
Don't blame yourself. If you have to go to your clergyman, your psychiatrist, whoever, do not carry that burden alone. Teach your children that people have to respect their bodies as well.
Absolutely.
Never cut off the dialogue with your children, because they will keep the burdens in their hearts for a very long time. Always have an open dialogue. Teach your children how to protect themselves, that people have to respect their space and their body. And most and last part of this conversation, let our children be children. Have the first inkling of a teacher doing some misdeeds to a student, please call for an investigation. Because a lot of people are picking and preying on Black boys because of the notion that no one's going to come to those boys' rescue.
Yeah. Which is sadly too often the case.
And the business is Black Lion Security Firm. Our motto is the pride of protection with the protection of the pride. We did a couple of security gigs and executive protection for a couple of DMV rappers. Oddly enough, it was for a Halloween party, and the next day we got a lot of people who's trying to get our services, to the untimely death of Takeoff from Domingos.
Okay.
So I think later tonight I'm going to speak about that on my channel.
And how do they find your channel?
Go to the Officer of the Goddamn Laws channel, Charles Faulkner Jr. Just plug it in. I'll even tag the channel in the comment section. Please welcome. If you want to hear how a person with my extensive career and experience look at this situation, come tonight immediately after this broadcast, and let's talk about it. I don't even care if somebody wants to debate and say, Charles, you don't know a damn thing you're talking about. Okay, we'll see. But please come to Charles Faulkner Jr., aka the Officer of the Goddamn Law, and I'm going to put the link to my channel in the chat.
Appreciate that. All right, fellas, I'm going to take y'all down. Thank you for coming through. All appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right, fellas. Peace. So shout out to Ian, shout out to AB, shout out to Officer Faulkner. Appreciate y'all for coming up. Make sure you check out Officer Faulkner's show. Check out his channel. support what he's doing, and much appreciation to all three. So we got I'm Aziz says, good topic, elders. As an ex-foster child / gangster, I want to add that there are tons of Black men who went through those lifestyle and was molested mostly by Black women. Yeah. And we didn't even deal with Black boys in the foster care industry. That is a whole conversation unto itself. But even in regard to sexual assault, right? The kind of experiences that these boys have gone through in the system can be absolutely ridiculous. So that said, I hope to get the conversation started in the comments section. Please feel free to share links, share relevant articles, essays, even personal experiences if you feel so inclined about these kind of things, because at the end of the day, I want brothers to, take license to know that they can talk about these issues, and there are segments, pockets of brothers who will receive you, in the proper manner you should be received, as opposed to ridiculing or dismissing the reality of what so many brothers experience. So that said, appreciate y'all coming forward tonight. I want to share, make sure that you check out the Onyx Network. You can download the Onyx Network on your iPhone, your Android. Just go to the App Store and do that. You can do it on Amazon Fire TV, Roku. You can even do it on the web. You can literally go to my website, www.thasanjohnson.com. And if you click in the media, you'll find the Onyx Network in the menu. You can click there. You can watch it live. It's 24 hours a day, 365. You can check the channel out on all of those different platforms. And of course, still entertain the Institute for Black Male Studies. You can entertain the Onyx Report here on YouTube. The last interview I did with Professor Irony Osei Frimpong on the Institute for Black Male Studies website. Check that out. I think, not the website, on the YouTube page. Institute for Black Male Studies YouTube page. I think you'll find that interview really interesting if you hadn't had a chance to check it out. And there's scores of others on there that I think you guys might like, all over the place, in terms of the spectrum of what brothers deal with. So support the endeavor, support what we're doing, help us to broaden it out and expand it. And I hope you guys have a good night. Wish you well. See y'all soon. Peace. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic and selfish and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace.